I remember when I was sitting in a class in Bangkok, Thailand. There were two teachers, and they were telling a funny story. One of the teachers was like a stand-up comedian. He was pacing, walking back and forth in the class, doing all these crazy faces, running around, acting like a crazy man, like a madman. And the whole class was laughing. We were laughing and laughing and laughing for an entire hour. It was like watching a stand-up comedian perform. And it was very enjoyable, extremely entertaining. But the amazing thing was, it was 100% in Thai, meaning in the Thai language. This was a very unique, a very different experience for me as a language learner and as a language teacher. I was a student in the AUA Thai language program in Bangkok. And the special thing about this program is that they use a listen-only approach, meaning there's a long silent period for the students. Students do not speak Thai for many months. Instead, what the students do is they go and they just listen to teachers tell jokes, tell stories, play games, just basically entertain you and have fun in Thai, in simple Thai. And this had a big effect on me. I realized that this had some great advantages, that there were many things about this kind of approach that were good. Now, the Thai language program at AUA used two teachers, co-teachers. So there were always two teachers so that they could talk to each other in Thai while the class listened. This was also a very effective method and very interesting. I think the best thing about the method for me was that it was very low stress. Thai can be a very difficult language for foreigners to learn, especially people coming from European languages. In Thai, pronunciation is especially important. It's very important. It's a tonal language like Mandarin or Cantonese. And because it's a tonal language, if you get the pronunciation wrong, you can totally change the meaning of a word. And one of the advantages of this long silent period, according to David Long, the director of AUA, and his predecessor, the man who started this program, Dr. J. Marvin Brown, according to them, the best way to sound like a native speaker is to have a long silent period. So let's talk a little more about this idea of a silent period. A silent period is something that naturally happens with language learners. In other words, when you're a baby, when you were a baby, you did not immediately speak. If you watch a baby, of course, you realize they do not immediately begin to speak. On day 2, they do not say, "Hello, how are you?" Right? And parents, of course, do not try to force them to speak. We all understand that babies don't speak, that they need many months of listening before they will start to speak. And that period of just listening, of only listening for a baby, is called the silent period. Now, they're not totally silent. They make noises, but they don't say any words. What's interesting, however, is that during the silent period, while the baby is just listening, they begin to understand the language. And we know this because we can say things to them and they will react, and they will react correctly. It's quite interesting. So the point is that the natural way to learn language is to listen for many months without speaking, to gradually understand more and more and more of the language. And then as you understand more of the language, you will reach a point where something happens in your brain. We don't know. Nobody knows. Linguists don't know exactly how this happens or why. But at some you understand enough. And then you will spontaneously, without forcing, without effort, start to speak. Now, in the beginning, how does this happen? It just one word comes out. So again, with a baby, we think about a baby. What does a baby usually say first? Something like mama, daddy, dada, something like that, right? Depends on the language. In English, it's mama, mama, daddy, da-da-da, da-da, usually. They can't even say daddy, they say da-da. Again, we have a few important points here. One of the important points is, oh, good, we have our guest is here. David, I'm just starting now. I'll get to you in a second. So one of the important points is that as the baby learns, that the baby will come out with just like one word or two. And then once the baby gets more comfortable, the words will get more and more correct. And sorry, our guest is here now, so let me get our guest to join us here. Our guest is David Long from AUA, who I just mentioned, AUA. So he's the director of the AUA program, the AUA Thai program. And just a second, let's see if we can get him on here. David, hello, can you hear me? Okay. David, hello.
Hello. David, hello. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing? All right. Sorry for the technical problems here.
Okay.
So, my video is going to be pretty poor quality. I'm holding the phone in my hand so I can make this work.
Okay. No problem.
No problem. All right.
Can you tell me just about your early experiences learning Thai yourself?
Okay. My experience learning Thai, right?
Yes.
In what respect? You want to narrow that for me a bit, or
when did you start first learning Thai? Like when you came to Thailand, when did you? What was your? Did you go to a class? Did you just learn it on the street? What was your first experience?
Okay, right. So yeah, when I moved to Bangkok, I guess I knew that I needed to do something, and so I looked around for a school, anything that would be different from my experience studying languages before. I did.
Oh, and we unfortunately just lost our connection. So David is in Bangkok right now, and he's having some difficulty with his connection. So sorry about that. We'll see if he connects back. We'll talk to him some more. So I was asking him about his early experiences with Thai because he learned with this system. He learned with a very long silent period. The program in Thai was started by Dr. J. Marvin Brown, and David was one of his first students. So David first learned using the method, using a listen-only approach. We'll ask him how long his silent period was, but I believe it was 6 to 12 months where he only listened to Thai and did not speak it at all. Interesting. And then later, David, when Dr. J. Marvin Brown died, David Long, our guest, took over, and he became the director of the program. So let's see if we can get him to get this to work, and hopefully he'll be back with us. But in the meantime, let me just continue about this idea of the silent period. So the silent period is a natural phenomenon. It's something that happens naturally. And again, an important point, I was talking about babies. When babies first start to speak, they're not perfect, of course. So even though they might say dada, which is not a correct English word, everybody knows they're trying to say daddy or dad. And so the parents become very happy. Yay, they said daddy, dada. And everyone gets really happy, and so the baby's happy. And of course, eventually then, the baby's speech gets a little better, a little better. Their pronunciation gets better. So instead of just saying mama, mama, they say mama, mama. And eventually they learn to say daddy correctly. Another point, when they first start to speak, they're only saying one word usually. Then after some time, maybe a month, maybe several months, depends on the child, they'll start to make two-word phrases. You know, mama, eat, you know, something like that, something very simple. Mama, I want to eat. They cannot say a whole sentence. Mom, I want to eat some food, please. They don't start trying to learn and speak long, long sentences. They start with very, very short phrases. One word, then 2 words, then 3 words. They gradually get longer. So this is the natural way of acquiring a language and speaking. for your native language for a child. We don't always have to learn exactly like a child does, but we can learn a lot about the natural process. And the reason that's important is it shows us how our brains work best. It shows us how our brains naturally work to learn a language. In our case, English. That's important. Very important. So the question then is, could this method of having a long silent period help us? Could the silent period also help adult learners? What can we learn from babies that we can use as adults? Now, as adults, we have many advantages. In fact, our memory's better. We have many more life experiences, so it's easier for us to learn new words faster. An adult can learn new vocabulary much more quickly than a child, and can learn a language much more quickly than a child. There's an idea that children are always better at language, but that's not quite true. What children are especially good at is pronunciation and natural grammar. That they learn very well. And they also learn just natural phrases. They learn how to very naturally and effortlessly use vocabulary in a correct way. So we have some advantages as adults, but we also have some weaknesses, and we can learn from the children by, learning from what they do. We've got David coming back here. Let's see if we can get him to work. David, hello, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, yes. We can just do this on audio, I guess.
Okay, well, we might need to. I think there's some connectivity problems here.
Okay, no worries, no worries.
Yeah, okay, so you want me to take up where I got cut off there?
Yes, please, go ahead. Yeah, tell us about how you learned the Thai language yourself.
Yeah. So when I arrived in Bangkok, I knew I didn't want to be illiterate. I knew that I wanted to be able to understand what was going on around me. And I knew that my experiences previously in language classes of all kinds, everything from English classes to Spanish to Greek, I knew that I didn't enjoy those type classes. So I just looked around for anything different. And I came across the AUA program, the Thai program at AUA, and it was definitely different. And so what they said to do, and you need to know, I guess, that in those days I had no real interest in language learning, language study outside of the fact that I wanted to do well in learning Thai. And so what they were testing in those days was the idea that as an adult I could do what the child does. And so I said, well, what's that? And they said, well, just sit back, let us entertain you, and listen a lot, watch a lot. I said, well, that sounds too easy and too good to be true. But it spoke to something kind of like it made sense to me at one level. And at the other level of, just an educated person, you think, man, is this going to work? And so I did what they said do with the idea that I had a year I could devote to this, and so I devoted a year to it. And it was an experiment on my part, and the outcome after 1 year was I understood most of what was going on around me. When I say most of what was going on, what I mean by that is in Thai, my understanding when it was Thai, speaking with Thais, not necessarily directed at me, it was around 70%. Wow. And then my ability to speak, though, was very low. Like I remember at the end of a year inviting teachers to come to my house, and we made a dinner and just a way to say thank you for what they'd done. And I remember trying to, just say thank you and give them a few words. And it was embarrassing, to be honest. So my speaking ability was quite low. I didn't try to analyze that a whole lot. What made sense to me at that time was that my speaking ability would naturally follow my listening ability. And that was my experience. And within a year and a half after that, so a total of about 2.5 years, I felt I could say anything that I needed to or wanted to. And after about 5 years of just living here using the language, I found that I met few people whose ability was few foreigners whose ability could out express me, in a sort of a natural way. I meet a lot of people who are educated in Thai language beyond myself, so I'm not a Thai scholar by any means.